The old alarm clock on Lily's nightstand showed 6:30 a.m. when she heard the familiar rumble of the garbage truck turning onto Oak Street. Every Tuesday morning, she would run to her bedroom window and peek through the torn curtains, waiting for the friendly man with the kind smile to wave at her. Today felt different, though. Her whole body hurt, and she could barely lift her arms to push the curtain aside. Carlos Rodriguez had been working the same route for almost 3 years now. He knew every house, every family, and every dog that would bark at his truck. But the little girl at 1247 Oak Street always caught his attention. She had these big brown eyes that seemed too old for her face, and she never played outside like the other kids in the neighborhood. Something about her reminded him of his own daughter back home. As Carlos guided his truck down the quiet street, he noticed something unusual. The little girl wasn't at her window this morning. Instead, she was standing by the front door of her house, and even from a distance he could see she was crying. His heart sank when he realized she was wearing nothing but a thin nightgown, and her feet were bare on the cold concrete. Lily had been awake all night, listening to her parents shouting downstairs. The arguing had gotten worse over the past few months, and last night was the worst yet. She heard things breaking, doors slamming, and words that made her stomach feel sick. When her father finally stormed out of the house around 3 a.m., her mother came upstairs with that scary look in her eyes again. The bruises on Lily's arms throbbed as she remembered trying to hide under her bed, but there was no hiding from her mother's anger. The woman who was supposed to protect her had grabbed her roughly, shaking her and blaming her for everything wrong in their lives. The worst part wasn't even the physical pain. It was the look of hate in her mother's eyes, like Lily was the enemy instead of her own child. Carlos slowed his truck when he saw the girl step off the porch. Something was very wrong. In all the months he'd been watching her wave from the window, he'd never seen her outside. She was stumbling slightly, like she was hurt, and tears were streaming down her face. "Mister, please help me," Lily called out in a voice so small that Carlos almost didn't hear it over the rumble of his truck's engine. He immediately stopped the vehicle and jumped down from the driver's seat. Up close, he could see the purple marks on her thin arms and the fear in her eyes that no child should ever have to feel. His protective instincts kicked in immediately, the same ones that made him check on his own kids every night before bed, even when he was exhausted from work. "Hey there, little one," Carlos said gently, kneeling down to her eye level. "What's your name? Are you hurt?" Lily looked up at this man who had always been kind to her from a distance. He had rough hands from years of hard work, but his voice was soft and caring. For the first time in months, she felt like maybe someone actually cared about what happened to her. "I'm Lily," she whispered, wrapping her arms around herself to try to stop shivering. "I don't want to go back in there. They're going to hurt me again." Carlos felt his heart break a little. He had seen a lot of things in his years working in different neighborhoods, but a child this young and this scared always affected him deeply. He could see she was trembling, partly from cold and partly from fear. "Who's going to hurt you, Lily?" he asked carefully, not wanting to frighten her more but needing to understand what was happening. "My mom and dad," she said, looking back at the house with terror in her eyes. "They're always angry now and they make me do scary things. I tried to be good, but they keep hurting me anyway." Carlos noticed how she kept looking over her shoulder at the house, like she expected someone to come out and drag her back inside. His own daughter was about the same age as this little girl, and he couldn't imagine anyone treating a child this way. "What kind of scary things, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice gentle but his heart racing with concern. Lily's eyes filled with fresh tears as she struggled to find the words. "In the basement," she whispered. "They make me help them with the white powder stuff. It makes my hands burn and the smell makes me sick. They said if I ever tell anyone, the police will take me away forever and I'll never see anyone again." Carlos felt a chill run down his spine. This innocent child was describing something that sounded very dangerous, and he could see the chemical burns on her small hands now that she was closer to him. Whatever was happening in that house, it was putting this little girl in serious danger. "Lily, you're very brave for telling me this," he said, gently taking off his work jacket and wrapping it around her shivering shoulders. "But I need you to know that the police don't take children away for telling the truth. They help children who are in trouble." The little girl looked up at him with hope and fear fighting in her eyes. "Really? They won't be mad at me?" "No, sweetheart, they won't be mad at you. You're the victim here, not the one doing anything wrong," Carlos assured her, though his mind was racing with the decision he knew he had to make. Carlos had his own fears about getting involved with the police. His immigration status wasn't perfect, and he had 3 children of his own to think about. If something happened to him, his family would suffer. But looking at this broken little girl wearing his jacket that was 3 times too big for her, he knew he couldn't just walk away. "Lily, I'm going to help you, okay? But we need to go somewhere safe where adults who know how to handle this can take care of you," he said, making a decision that would change both their lives forever. She nodded, trusting this kind stranger more than the people who were supposed to love her most. As Carlos helped her into the passenger seat of his truck, Lily felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the nightmare might finally end. The truck rumbled to life as Carlos made a U-turn, leaving Oak Street behind. In his rearview mirror, he could see the house where this little girl had been suffering in silence, and he promised himself that he would do everything in his power to make sure she never had to go back there again. Neither of them knew that this moment of courage would set in motion a series of events that would not only save Lily's life but also change the entire community forever. Carlos drove slowly through the quiet neighborhood, his mind racing as he tried to figure out what to do next. The little girl sitting beside him had stopped crying, but she kept pulling his work jacket tighter around herself like it was a shield. Every few minutes she would look back through the rear window, as if expecting to see someone chasing them. "Where are we going?" Lily asked in a small voice, her fingers clutching the jacket's worn fabric. "Somewhere safe," Carlos replied, trying to keep his voice calm even though his heart was pounding. "There's a diner about 10 minutes from here. We can get you something warm to drink and you can tell me more about what's been happening at home." Lily nodded, but Carlos could see the fear still dancing in her eyes. She was so small in the big truck seat, her bare feet dangling above the floor. He cranked up the heat and made sure the vents were pointed toward her. The Morning Cup diner was nearly empty when they arrived. Carlos chose a booth in the back corner, away from the windows where they could talk privately. The waitress, an older woman named Betty, took one look at Lily's condition and immediately brought over a cup of hot chocolate without being asked. "You drink this, sweetheart," Betty said kindly, placing the steaming mug in front of Lily. "And if you need anything else, you just let me know." Carlos ordered coffee for himself, though he doubted he'd be able to drink much of it. His stomach was tied in knots as he watched Lily wrap her small hands around the warm cup, finally starting to stop shivering. "Lily," he said gently, "I need you to tell me more about what happens at your house. I know it's scary, but I promise I'm here to help you, not hurt you." The little girl took a sip of her hot chocolate, leaving a small mustache of foam on her upper lip. For a moment, she almost looked like a normal kid, but then the haunted expression returned to her eyes. "My parents used to be different," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Before Daddy lost his job, they would read me stories and take me to the park. But then everything changed." Carlos leaned forward slightly, encouraging her to continue while being careful not to seem intimidating. "Daddy started bringing home these new friends, scary people who would come at night and stay in the basement for hours. Mommy would send me to my room and tell me to put on my headphones and never come downstairs no matter what I heard." Lily paused, taking another small sip of her drink. Carlos could see this was difficult for her, but he knew she needed to get it all out. "But I got curious one night," she continued. "I snuck down to see what they were doing. That's when I saw all the white powder and the weird machines. There were so many chemicals that the air hurt my nose and throat. Daddy was wearing a mask, but I wasn't, and I started coughing really bad." Carlos felt his blood run cold. This innocent child was describing what sounded like a dangerous drug operation happening right under her nose. "What happened when they found you down there?" he asked, dreading the answer. Lily's eyes filled with tears again. "Daddy got so angry. He grabbed me really hard and shook me. He said I could never, ever tell anyone about what I saw, or the police would come and take me away from them forever. He said I'd go to jail too because I was part of it now." "Part of it?" Carlos repeated, his heart sinking. "They started making me help," Lily whispered, looking around nervously as if someone might be listening. "At first they just made me stay down there while they worked so they could watch me. But then they started giving me jobs." Carlos had to clench his fists under the table to control his anger. The idea of adults putting a child in such danger made him sick. "What kind of jobs, sweetheart?" "I had to wear gloves and help mix things in bowls. The chemicals would splash sometimes and burn my hands even through the gloves. When I cried, Mommy would get mad and say I was being a baby. She said this was how we were going to make money now, and everyone in the family had to help. Lily showed Carlos her hands, and he could see the red marks and small scars from chemical burns. His own hands shook as he realized how much this child had been suffering in silence. They told me it was medicine, Lily continued, but it didn't look like any medicine I'd ever seen. And the people who came to buy it were scary. They had crazy eyes and would shake a lot. Some of them looked really sick. Carlos knew exactly what she was describing, and it wasn't medicine at all. These people had been forcing a 7-year-old child to help them manufacture illegal drugs in conditions that were poisoning her little body. Did anyone else know what was happening? He asked. Lily shook her head. They took me out of school 3 months ago. They told the teachers I was sick and had to stay home for a long time. But really, they needed me to help during the day when the neighbors were at work and couldn't hear the noise from the basement. What about your friends? Didn't anyone wonder where you went? I didn't really have friends, Lily admitted sadly. Mommy and Daddy never let me play with other kids. They said other families would be jealous of us and try to cause trouble. Carlos realized how isolated this little girl had been. Her parents had cut her off from the outside world to hide their illegal activities, using her as free labor while slowly poisoning her with dangerous chemicals. Lily, what you're describing isn't making medicine, Carlos said carefully. What your parents are doing is illegal and very dangerous. Those chemicals can make you very sick, and no child should ever be around them. Lily's eyes went wide with fear. Are you going to call the police? Daddy said they would put me in jail too because I helped. No, sweetheart, Carlos said firmly. Children don't go to jail for things their parents force them to do. You're the victim here. The police help children who are in danger, they don't punish them. For the first time since they'd sat down, Carlos saw a tiny spark of hope in Lily's eyes. Really? She asked. Really, he confirmed. But I need to ask you something important. Are your parents at home right now? Lily nodded. Daddy came back early this morning after he left last night. They were both sleeping when I ran outside to find you, but they'll wake up soon, and when they see I'm gone. She didn't finish the sentence, but Carlos could see the terror creeping back into her face. They're going to be so angry, she whispered. They'll hurt me worse than ever before. Carlos reached across the table and gently patted her small hand. Lily, I promise you something. You are never going back to that house. I'm going to make sure the right people know what's been happening to you, and they're going to keep you safe. As he said the words, Carlos knew he was making a commitment that would change everything. But looking at this brave little girl who had suffered so much, he knew it was the only choice he could make. Carlos sat in his truck outside the diner, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles had turned white. Lily was beside him, still wrapped in his work jacket, looking up at him with those trusting brown eyes. She believed he was going to save her, but Carlos wasn't sure he was brave enough to be anyone's hero. His phone buzzed with a text from his wife Maria. How's work today? Kids asking when Daddy's coming home. The message came with a picture of his 3 children eating breakfast, all of them smiling and safe in their small apartment. His youngest daughter, Sophia, was about the same age as Lily, with the same curious eyes and innocent smile. Mr. Carlos? Lily's small voice broke through his thoughts. Are you okay? You look scared. Carlos looked down at her and realized she was right. He was terrified, but probably not for the reasons she thought. The truth was, Carlos Rodriguez wasn't supposed to be in this country. He'd crossed the border 8 years ago with nothing but hope and determination to build a better life for his family. Since then, he'd worked honest jobs, paid taxes, and tried to stay invisible to avoid any trouble with immigration officials. I'm just thinking, little one, he said softly, trying to keep his voice steady. But Carlos was doing much more than thinking. His mind was spinning with all the ways this could go wrong. If he walked into a police station with this child, they would ask questions. They would want his information, his identification, his story. What if they decided he was more trouble than he was worth? What if they called immigration services? His children could wake up tomorrow without a father, just like Lily was living without parents who truly cared about her. He thought about his own childhood in Mexico, growing up with parents who worked multiple jobs just to put food on the table, but who still found time to read him stories and help with homework. His father had always told him, Mijo, we may not have much money, but we are rich in love and honesty. What would his father think of him now, hesitating to help a child in need? My daddy says the police are bad people who hurt families like ours. Lily said quietly, breaking the silence again. Is that true? Carlos looked at her, seeing the fear creeping back into her eyes. Here was a child who had been told lies her whole life, trained to fear the very people who were supposed to protect her. How could he explain that sometimes the police were the good guys, especially when he wasn't even sure he believed it himself? Lily, your daddy told you that because he didn't want you to ask them for help, Carlos explained carefully. But police officers have an important job. They protect children who are in danger. That's what they're supposed to do. But what if they don't believe me? What if they think I'm lying? Carlos could hear the panic starting to build in her voice, and it broke his heart. This little girl had been through so much trauma, and now she was scared that even the people meant to help her would let her down. They'll believe you, he said, though he wasn't entirely sure himself. And I'll be right there with you to make sure they listen. As soon as the words left his mouth, Carlos realized he'd made his decision. He couldn't abandon this child no matter what it might cost him personally. His own father had risked everything to give his family a better life, and now it was Carlos's turn to do what was right, regardless of the consequences. He started the truck and began driving toward the police station downtown. With every mile, his heart beat faster, but he kept glancing at Lily and remembering why this mattered so much. She was somebody's daughter, just like Sophia was his daughter. If Sophia were in trouble, he would want someone to be brave enough to help her, even if it was scary. Carlos? Lily asked as they got closer to the downtown area. What if my parents try to find me? They won't know where you are, he assured her. And even if they figure out where we went, there will be people there whose job it is to keep you safe. The police station was a big brick building that looked intimidating even to Carlos. He parked the truck and sat there for a moment, taking deep breaths. Lily seemed to sense his nervousness and reached over to pat his arm with her small hand. It's okay to be scared, she said in her sweet little voice. I'm scared too, but you told me brave people do the right thing even when they're scared. Carlos smiled despite his anxiety. This amazing little girl was comforting him, even though she was the one who needed protection. She was teaching him about courage without even knowing it. They walked into the police station together, Lily's small hand tucked safely in his larger one. The lobby was busy with officers and civilians, and Carlos felt his stomach flip with nervousness. A receptionist behind a glass window looked up when they approached. We need help, Carlos said, his accent thicker than usual because of his nerves. This little girl, she's been hurt by her parents. The receptionist immediately became more alert when she saw Lily. Of course, let me get Detective Williams. She handles cases involving children. Within minutes, a woman in her 40s appeared. Detective Rachel Williams had kind eyes and spoke in a gentle voice that immediately put Lily a little more at ease. She led them to a small, comfortable room with soft chairs and children's books on a table. Hello, sweetheart, she said to Lily. My name is Rachel, and my job is to help kids who are in trouble. Can you tell me what happened to you? Carlos sat quietly while Lily began to tell her story again. Detective Williams listened carefully, asking gentle questions but never making Lily feel like she was in trouble. Carlos could see the detective's expression grow more serious as she heard about the chemicals, the burns on Lily's hands, and the way her parents had threatened her. When Lily finished talking, Detective Williams turned to Carlos. Sir, I can't thank you enough for bringing her in. You may have saved this child's life. Carlos felt a moment of pride, but then the worry crept back in. Detective, I need to tell you something, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm not. My papers aren't. Detective Williams held up her hand to stop him. Mr. Rodriguez, let me be very clear about something. You did the right thing today. When someone helps a child in danger, we don't ask questions about anything else. Your immigration status is not my concern. Protecting this little girl is. Carlos felt like a huge weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Really? Really, she confirmed. In fact, people like you who step up to help children are exactly the kind of people we want in our community. You showed incredible courage today. As Carlos sat there watching Detective Williams gently talk with Lily about what would happen next, he realized something important. Sometimes doing the right thing means taking a leap of faith, trusting that good will come from good intentions. He thought about his children at home and knew that someday he would be proud to tell them about the day their father helped save a little girl's life. Detective Rachel Williams moved quickly after hearing Lily's story. Within 30 minutes of their arrival at the station, She had assembled a team of specialists who knew exactly how to handle situations like this. The small conference room buzzed with quiet activity as officers prepared for what could be a very dangerous operation. "We need to move fast," Detective Williams explained to her team.
"If the parents wake up and realize the child is missing, they might destroy evidence or run."
"We can't give them that chance." Carlos sat in the hallway with Lily, both of them waiting nervously while the adults made their plans. Lily had been given some crackers and juice, and a victim advocate named Janet had brought her a stuffed bear to hold. But Carlos could see that the little girl was still scared, jumping at every sound and asking if her parents were coming to get her. "They can't hurt you anymore," Carlos kept reassuring her, though his own stomach was twisted with worry. "These people know how to keep you safe." Meanwhile, Detective Williams was coordinating with the hazmat team. "If this child is telling the truth about chemical burns and toxic fumes, we need protective gear before we enter that basement," she told Lieutenant Brooks, who was leading the tactical response unit. Lieutenant Brooks nodded grimly. "We've seen this before. People who cook illegal substances in their homes don't care about safety, especially not the safety of their own children. We'll go in prepared for the worst." The team loaded into several unmarked vehicles, leaving Detective Williams at the station with Lily and Carlos. She knew the little girl would be terrified if she thought the police were going to confront her parents, so she tried to keep things calm and normal. "Lily, would you like to color some pictures while we wait?" Detective Williams asked, pulling out a box of crayons and coloring books. "Janet here loves to color too. Maybe she can show you her favorite animals to draw." But Lily was too anxious to focus on coloring. She kept looking toward the window as if she expected to see her parents' angry faces appear at any moment. Carlos stayed close beside her, and she seemed to feel safer when he was nearby. 20 minutes later, Detective Williams received the first radio call from the scene. "We're approaching the house now," came Lieutenant Brooks's voice through the static. "No movement visible. The neighbors confirm they saw the male subject return early this morning, and no one has left since then." At the house on Oak Street, the tactical team surrounded the property quietly. Lieutenant Brooks could smell something chemical and sharp even before they reached the front door. His years of experience told him that Lily had been telling the truth about what was happening in this house. "Hazmat suits on," he ordered his team. "This place is going to be toxic." When they knocked on the front door, it took several minutes before anyone answered. Finally, a man in his 30s opened it, looking groggy and confused. David Henderson, Lily's father, clearly hadn't expected to see police officers on his doorstep this morning. "What's this about?" he asked, trying to sound casual but failing to hide his nervousness. "Sir, we have a warrant to search this property," Lieutenant Brooks said firmly, showing the papers that Detective Williams had obtained based on Lily's testimony. "We need you and anyone else in the house to come outside immediately." David's face went pale as he realized what was happening. "I don't know what you think you're going to find, but—" "Sir, please step outside and keep your hands where we can see them," Lieutenant Brooks interrupted. "We'll explain everything once the premises are secure." Lisa Henderson, Lily's mother, appeared behind her husband looking panicked. "Where's Lily?" she demanded. "What did you do with our daughter?" The officers didn't answer her questions immediately. Their priority was securing the scene and making sure no one destroyed evidence. As David and Lisa were placed in separate police cars, the search team began their careful examination of the house. What they found in the basement was worse than anyone had expected. The entire lower level had been converted into a sophisticated operation for manufacturing illegal substances. Tables covered with equipment, containers full of dangerous chemicals, and ventilation systems that clearly weren't working properly filled the space. "No wonder this kid was getting chemical burns," Officer Martinez said, documenting the scene with his camera. "The fumes down here are toxic even with our protective gear on." Lieutenant Brooks carefully photographed everything, knowing that this evidence would be crucial in court. He found small footstools that had obviously been placed so a child could reach the work surfaces, and child-sized gloves covered in chemical residue. The sight made his stomach turn as he thought about little Lily being forced to work in these dangerous conditions. Upstairs, the living conditions were just as disturbing. Lily's bedroom was barely furnished, with a thin mattress on the floor and bars on the windows. The refrigerator contained very little food, mostly spoiled, while the master bedroom had expensive electronics and piles of cash hidden in various places. Back at the police station, Detective Williams's phone rang with updates from the scene. Each piece of evidence confirmed what Lily had told them, but it also revealed how much worse the situation was than even the brave little girl had understood. They found over $40,000 in cash hidden throughout the house. Detective Williams reported to Carlos quietly, not wanting Lily to hear the details. And the basement? It's exactly like she described, but even more dangerous than we thought. Carlos felt his heart break again as he realized how much suffering this child had endured. How could parents do that to their own daughter? He asked, shaking his head. Some people lose their way, Detective Williams replied sadly. They get involved in illegal activities and convince themselves that everyone has to make sacrifices for the family business. They forget that children should be protected, not used as workers. 3 hours later, the search was complete. David and Lisa Henderson were officially arrested and charged with multiple felonies, including child endangerment, operating an illegal laboratory, and forcing a minor to participate in illegal activities. The evidence against them was overwhelming, and both would likely spend many years in prison. When Detective Williams finally sat down with Lily again, the little girl's first question wasn't about her parents or the house. "Am I really safe now?" she asked in a small voice. "Yes, sweetheart," Detective Williams assured her. "Your parents won't be able to hurt you anymore. We have people whose job it is to find you a safe place to live with adults who will take good care of you." Lily looked up at Carlos, who had stayed with her through the entire ordeal. "Will I ever see Carlos again?" she asked. Carlos felt tears coming to his eyes as he knelt down beside her chair. "Lily, you're the bravest person I've ever met," he told her. "And I promise, if the nice people here say it's okay, I would love for you to meet my family someday. My daughter Sophia is about your age, and I think you two would be great friends." For the first time in hours, Lily smiled. It was a small smile, but it was genuine, and it gave everyone in the room hope that this remarkable little girl would be able to heal from everything she had been through. Detective Williams made a note in her file about Carlos's offer. She had seen many cases over the years, but the bond between this kind-hearted man and the child he had saved was something special. Sometimes, she thought, the most beautiful thing about her job was watching ordinary people do extraordinary things for each other. 6 months had passed since that Tuesday morning when Lily ran barefoot to Carlos's garbage truck, and the little girl sitting in the sunny kitchen looked completely different from the scared child who had begged for help. Her hair was shiny and healthy now, pulled back in neat braids that her new grandmother had taught her to do herself. The chemical burns on her hands had healed, leaving only faint scars that reminded everyone how brave she had been. "Grandma Rose, can we make the cookies shaped like trucks today?" Lily asked, standing on a small stool beside the kitchen counter. "I want to make some for Carlos when he visits." Rose Martinez, Lily's maternal grandmother, smiled as she helped her granddaughter measure flour into a mixing bowl. When the social services called to tell her what had happened to Lily, Rose had immediately traveled from Arizona to take custody of the child she hadn't seen in over 2 years. Lily's parents had cut off all contact with Rose when she questioned their lifestyle choices, but now she was grateful to have a second chance to be part of her granddaughter's life. "Of course, sweetheart," Rose replied, giving Lily a gentle hug. "Carlos saved your life, so he deserves the best cookies we can make." The legal proceedings had moved surprisingly quickly. When David and Lisa Henderson realized how much evidence the police had against them, their lawyers advised them to accept plea deals rather than go to trial. David received 18 years in federal prison for manufacturing illegal substances and 25 years for child endangerment, to be served consecutively. Lisa got 15 years for her role in the operation and 20 years for the harm caused to Lily. Both would be in their 60s before they had any chance of being released. The judge who sentenced them, Honorable Judge Patricia Wong, had been clearly disgusted by what she heard during the proceedings. "I have seen many cases in my courtroom," she had said during sentencing, "but forcing an innocent child to participate in dangerous criminal activities while poisoning her body with toxic chemicals represents a level of parental failure that is truly shocking. These sentences reflect not just the serious nature of your crimes, but the vulnerability of your victim." Carlos had attended the sentencing hearing, sitting in the back row to support Lily, who was too young to be required to testify, but had wanted to see that justice was done. When the judge announced the sentences, Carlos felt a deep sense of relief. This brave little girl would never have to fear her parents again. The impact of Carlos's courage had rippled through the entire community in ways he never expected. The local newspaper had written a story about the hero sanitation worker who saved a child's life, though they kept Lily's name confidential to protect her privacy. The story caught the attention of immigration attorney Jessica Chen, who offered to help Carlos with his legal status pro bono. What you did demonstrates exactly the kind of character and community commitment that should be rewarded, not punished, Jessica had told Carlos during their first meeting. I want to help you and your family gain permanent legal status. The process had been complicated, but Jessica was determined to help. She filed applications for Carlos and his family under a program for crime victims and witnesses, arguing that his courageous act had helped law enforcement solve a serious case. After months of paperwork and interviews, Carlos received the phone call he had been dreaming about for 8 years. Carlos, we did it. Jessica's voice was full of excitement. Your family's applications have been approved. You're going to be permanent legal residents. Carlos had cried when he hung up the phone, thinking about how one moment of doing the right thing had changed everything for his family. His children would grow up with security and opportunities he had only dreamed of giving them. The relationship between Carlos and Lily had grown into something beautiful over the months. With Rose's permission and supervision from social services, Carlos had been allowed to maintain contact with the little girl whose life he had saved. His daughter, Sophia, who was just a year older than Lily, had become her best friend and biggest supporter. Dad, Lily is coming to my school play next week, Sophia announced excitedly one evening at dinner. She's so excited to see me be a butterfly in the spring show. Carlos smiled, watching his daughter's enthusiasm. Sophia had been incredibly proud to learn that her father was a hero, and she treated Lily like the sister she'd always wanted. The healing process hadn't been easy for Lily. She had nightmares for months and was afraid of loud noises, sudden movements, and being left alone. But with the help of a wonderful therapist named Dr. Amanda Foster, who specialized in helping children recover from trauma, Lily was slowly learning to trust again and believe that she deserved to be safe and loved. Lily has made remarkable progress, Dr. Foster had told Rose during one of their regular meetings. The fact that Carlos showed her such kindness at her most vulnerable moment gave her hope that not all adults would hurt her. That foundation of trust has been crucial to her healing. The Tuesday morning visits had become a cherished tradition. Every week, Carlos would stop by Rose's house after finishing his route, and Lily would run out to greet him with homemade cookies or drawings she had made. They would sit on the front porch and talk about school, friends, and her dreams for the future. I want to be a police officer when I grow up, Lily had told him recently, her eyes bright with determination. Just like Detective Williams, I want to help other kids who are scared and don't know how to ask for help. Carlos had smiled at her ambition. You would make an excellent police officer, Lily. You're already one of the bravest people I know. The impact of their story had reached even further than anyone expected. Detective Williams had used their case as an example when training other officers about recognizing signs of child abuse and the importance of building trust with immigrant communities. The police department had started a new program encouraging people to report suspected child abuse, regardless of their legal status, with protections for witnesses who come forward. On a sunny Tuesday morning, exactly 1 year after their first meeting, Carlos pulled his truck up to Rose's house to find a surprise waiting for him. Lily stood on the porch wearing a school uniform, her backpack ready for her first day at her new school. But this wasn't just any school day. It was the day she had been selected to speak at a community safety assembly about the importance of adults looking out for children. Carlos, she called out, running to give him a hug. Today I get to tell everyone about how you saved me. Rose watched from the porch, tears of gratitude in her eyes. A year ago, she had thought she might never see her granddaughter again. Now Lily was thriving, making friends, excelling in school, and ready to help other children find their voice. As Carlos hugged the little girl who had changed his life as much as he had changed hers, he thought about the lessons she had taught him. Sometimes the scariest thing to do is also the right thing to do. And sometimes when you find the courage to help one person, You end up helping an entire community discover what it means to truly care for one another. Are you ready to tell your story, brave girl? Carlos asked Lily as she climbed into Rose's car to head to school. I'm ready, Lily replied with confidence. And I'm going to tell them that heroes come in all different forms, and sometimes they drive garbage trucks and have the biggest hearts in the whole world.